Yeah, g'day everyone and welcome to the TryPod Live with Winnie and Clarkey. We are now live all over social media. We're live on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube. So g'day to everyone, no matter where you are coming to us. We will kick off our show as always. We'll go through our best bets before moving into our analysis and predictions game by game for this round. Now, of course, we can't mention best bets without welcoming in my incredible co-host, the captain of this show and the founder of TryPod Punting, Jacob Wynn. How are you, my friend?
Not that incredible, to be honest. Not in the last few weeks. Frustrating Anzac round. The highlight for me was kicking off the round with the Roosters. They put on 60, covered the spread. And the low light was Micah Sevo setting his team's chances on fire. And with it, our plus 10.5 on Friday night. And it flipped us to a 1-2 best bet record. The mixed matchup lost. And not that I expect to hit a double-digit odds SGM every weekend, but it's especially less likely when I don't nail enough of my most confident games. And I looking back, that's been the case for the whole of April. So hopefully we can turn the corner. I know it's going to turn around at some point, but I don't want to promise I want these results turned around yesterday. I can't say for sure it's going to be this week. All I can do is assure people again, despite the fact we've moved the show to Tuesday, which I appreciate is new, and we haven't benefited from any times we've gotten out in front of the market, I can promise I dedicate just as much time to the best bets and deep dive in the games as I ever have before. And that's despite also fighting technical issues for the last 2 weeks. I apologize again because I don't think this is going straight to the audio feed, which means if you're catching us now, you're watching us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube.
Yep, speaking of technical issues, my webcam is down for some reason today, so I'm just using the laptop's camera if anyone's wondering why I look a little bit different. But with that in mind, Winnie, let's move to our best bets segment. So let's draw back the curtains and please reveal for us what you have this week in the way of best bets.
So Undertaker's going to lose that little side bet. He's betting that Winnie was going to take the Roosters. I hope that Undertaker's going to lose another bet this weekend. I'll get to that pretty quickly. Look, as much as I'm 15 and 16, my best bet record's there for all to see. So you be the judge of what I say next. But this round has a feel to me of a round for the favourites. And I've got 3 favourites that I'll be playing as best bets. I'm going Melbourne Storm, sorry, Clarkey, against your Titans, minus 12.5, $1.90 Ladbrokes and Neds. If you play it on better, they have a margin over 12, which is the same thing, and that's 186. I just think Melbourne's humming now. They've got their spine in place. The Titans come off an emotional win, but like Fodderwake is a massive loss. I just don't think you can make this line big enough because the Titans have fought so hard in so many games. I could easily see them fighting hard and still not being that close to Melbourne. And Melbourne, with only 1 double-digit win this season, despite how dominant they are, that was last week. I think they're going to carry on and deliver more of the same. Later Saturday night, I'm going Cowboys minus 7.5 at $1.90 against my Finns. Several reasons, but what about round 1 where I took the Cowboys as a best bet and it was minus 5.5 at Suncorp? And now we go to QCB and the Cowboys are relatively healthier than the Finns. Like, obviously, there's been attrition. Both sides have lost a couple, but the Finns have lost a lot more than the Cowboys in that span. And yet the line is kind of suggesting a similar gap between these sides or even less than it was in round 1. I know that the Dolphins have probably impressed a little more, but not last week. Last week, North Queensland showed me they had the signs of life. This game's too important for North Queensland. They're not going to lose 4 in a row. I think they'll cover 7.5. And another team that I think we get their best shot from because it is so important. You know what I'm going to say, Clarkey. Who do I like on Sunday?
It's the Warriors.
I am taking the Warriors minus 3.5. Called it Sunday. $1.90 better. You were right. And I did, that didn't go into my thinking. But looking at the game, the Warriors also winless in their last 3. Yes, the Knights stepped up, but I think injured player theory, everyone steps up without Ponga. And then this week we all remember actually Armstrong is no Kalen Ponga. And I think the Warriors win this. The desperation will show through in their defense. They will make life very difficult for Newcastle, despite the fact it's a strong side at home. And New Zealand will just have a little bit too much class on top of their desperation and should cover that short line. Again, we'll get to game by game. I really don't know where the upsets are going to come from in round 9. And I know punters are going to have a field day with their multis, their SGMs, and no doubt there's a shocker or 2 out there. Can we find it? I haven't found it yet. Let us know in the comments who's going to kind of spoil this round, but hopefully no spoilers amongst my favorite 3 best bets, which again, are all favourites.
And I think to add a little bit to the Knights' best bet, Tyson Gamble came out today and says that I think we proved to ourselves and everybody else in the league that we're not a one-man show. So it's almost as if the Knights have kind of, feel like they've broken that curse already and they've already achieved what they set out to do, which that was one win, that obviously helps our best bet. I do love that comment from Cameron Smith on YouTube. I'm sure it's not the real Cameron Smith, but he says, is it just me, Winnie, or has everyone had a hard time on the punt these last couple of weeks? What's the cause? Is there anything you can put your finger on?
It's one of those things where even they ask coaches, did you see this bad performance coming? It's like, if you saw it coming, you would have done something differently. So I just think there've been some surprising games. And I think I touched on it a couple of weeks ago where even the market hasn't figured out a lot of these games where you'll get a market move. And we've been on the right side of more often than not. And then the side that nobody really had money coming from has got up and won. And my only explanation has been teams with key players out have stepped up in a lot of games where it was unpredictable. And, Dolphins in Darwin, a little bit of a poster child. The team on paper had no right to win, let alone the biggest win in club history. Those ones are hard to pick, and then they come back down to earth. So I'd suggest that a lot of us, me included, definitely taking into account, player availability. And we come to you 90 minutes after teams' lists have dropped, and we definitely discuss those. But I guess you can't always overweight that value either, because there's lots of good players waiting in the wings, and there's lots more that goes into these games than, just who's available on the team list.
And I think for me, my specialty on this podcast isn't betting or giving out best bets per se, but it's certainly breaking down the stats for each game. And there's been games this year where every single stat and indication has led to a certain side winning, and it just hasn't even played out in any sort of fashion at all. So interesting season so far. Let's get it back on track with the best bets this round. All right, we'll go game by game in just 1 second. Before we get there, we would be absolutely remiss if we didn't cross to our resident CEO, and we'll go game by game after that. So let us welcome in Mr. Tristan Merlehan for some bookie market analysis in today's episode of Where is Tristan?
From Top Sport here, and Titans finally broke their duck on the weekend, so I was very happy to go and watch that game over in New Zealand with a few of the Titans crews. So it was an exciting game. The boys did really, really well to hold on and get the victory, and that was our best result of the weekend. So it was a really good start to the weekend from the bookmaking front, but then things got a little bit tougher from there, where the other two Thursday games were a bit tricky, as well as the Friday night game, where I thought the Eels looked like they were in a really good spot, and then somehow Manly ended up winning that game 13+, which was pretty brutal. Then the other games were pretty ordinary as well, away from the Dolphins Knights, where that one was obviously a very handy result, with the Knights causing the upset there. So we move into the weekend coming up, and I think there's going to be we're actually going to suspend the game tonight when Manly for the Manly-Canberra game, when the DCE tribunal goes on. So the market hasn't moved on the back of him getting named in that side, but obviously depending if he gets off or if he gets charged, then that will see a bit of movement in that. I think it's probably priced in the middle at this stage. And then just having a look at the other games, the Panthers have moved out a point. That's gone 14 to 15.5 on the back of the teams getting named. The Bronx have gone 5.5 out to 7.5, and I think that's probably definitely due to Ezra Mann being named. And then the rest of the markets have stayed pretty solid from where we opened them earlier in the week. So not a huge amount of moving, but there will be something on the back of the decision tonight. So good luck if you're having a wager on the weekend, and of course, gamble responsibly.
Thank you very much to Tristan for that, coming from us live from what looked to be Top Sport headquarters. Will we have a mixed matchup during the show, Winnie, or are you planning that one a little later in the week?
I couldn't get there with liking all the favourites. I couldn't sort it out and negotiate it in time. So we'll definitely cook up something and post in the group. And you find it in the same place every week under Rugby League Markets on Top Sport for sure. Perfect.
And your thoughts on the Daly Cherry Evans incident quickly? You think he'll be let off or suspended 3 games?
That's a tough one. I was going to touch on it with that game because, it massively affects who you might play. My instinct is he won't win the charge, right? But I don't have a good gauge on it of what the likelihood is there. I don't know what other people are predicting. What about yourself?
I'm going to say Daly Cherry Evans gets off for my prediction because his lawyer previously represented someone and had a similar tackle downgraded to a grade 1. And this is actually Daly Cherry Evans' second time ever being charged. That previous charge was a grade 1 dangerous throw as well. So if he is successful, it means over a 300 plus NRL game career. He's only had 2 charges, both the same grade 1 dangerous throw. But we'll move on to that, and we'll talk about that on Clarkie's Rugby League column a little bit later tonight, if the judiciary is tonight. Let's move to game 1, Thursday, 7:50 p.m. It's the Rabbitohs v Panthers. We're at a core stadium, and the line is set at minus 14.5 against the Panthers. The Rabbitohs have Keon Kolomatangi at prop. Michael Cheekham is the preferred back row. Sunia Taruva returns for the Panthers, and Moses Leota returns for them. However, Scott Sorensen does not. All right, Winnie, these sides went 1-1 in 2023. However, the form of both sides this season reads the complete opposite. The Panthers are 4-1 in their last 5, where the Rabbitohs are 1-4. The line here suggests the bookies believe a big Penrith win is coming. So do you see it that way also?
So they went 1-1 last year, and this year's the complete opposite. But the opposite of 1-1 would be 1-1. I'm just messing with you. No, I know what you're saying. Last year they were even, and this year they are poles apart for sure. I wanted to touch on, first of all, it is 14 straight losses against the spread for Souths. The final 7 regular season games last year and the first 7 games this year, they have failed to cover the spread, which is remarkable and is like a 1 in 8,000 probability. Last week was the longest line they faced of them all. This week is even longer, as you would expect against Penrith. I still can't play Souths, and I guess I have some of the same concerns that I've had for the last month, which is I don't know that JD has the locker room. And it's not that they've been a total basket case. There've been moments, there were moments against Melbourne. I know it's funny to say that because they lost by close to 30 points, at least 4 tries there. But there was a little fight back, and I was really impressed by how much that team fought under a great deal of adversity against Cronulla. So there's examples where there's just a little bit of life there, and there's still, players that we recognise and we know are capable of a lot more. But it doesn't mean I'm going to be on them either, because I see this as the moment where Souths probably, if they're honest with themselves, don't expect to win, and Demetrio's relieved of his duties after this one. That's probably what I could see playing out. I also don't want to go against Penrith when they let a 20-point lead slip into real danger of losing last week. And I think when you get a strong side like that, it means they get up 2, 3, 4 tries this time, won't necessarily take the foot off the throat. So that's probably good news. It's a bit like Melbourne got that scare off the Dogs, and their very next game, they were much more ruthless against South Sydney. The history is true. Like both games last year, really close, and Souths had a really memorable comeback win in one of them to upset Penrith. And then you go the year before, that was a prelim. Souths were up 12-0, had a chance to win. The game totally flipped after that. Of course, 2021, the grand final. That's after Souths also upset Penrith week 1. But all these recent history is more reason to take Penrith, I think, because Penrith will take Souths very seriously. They will have total respect for the Rabbitohs because the Rabbitohs have had their measure on multiple occasions. The difference is it's been the Souths pack that's really matched it with Penrith, and then Souths playmakers have been able to be good enough to take the chances when they arise. But this is not the same Souths as we know. So it's Penrith or nothing. And if I'm going to be completely honest, as I always am, I'm not playing Penrith because it's just too damn obvious that Souths are going to lose 15 times against the spread and that Penrith would roll them. I just don't think, personally, I don't see a pathway to making a lot of money, long-term punting back in the same picks that almost everyone else will be. But I don't blame you if you're taking Penrith, because I haven't really given any good reasons why they won't make a mincemeat of Souths.
Yeah, it's a tough old game to predict at that line, at least. I think the head-to-head winner aspect is easy to pick in it. For what it's worth, the Rabbitohs board is reportedly meeting as we're live. So they reconvened at 5 p.m. today because they couldn't make a decision on Demetrio's future. I just want to put this out there for any punters. There is a myth that goes around that teams perform better the week after or the week their coach gets sacked, and that's actually not true. Teams lose more often than not when their coach is sacked. But every time a coach is sacked, we see that brought up as a reason to get on them. So just a caution there, I suppose.
But they might lose more often than not, but they always get the coach sacked because they've been losing. So they still might perform better than they have been. So I don't know if you'll get a chance, but I'd like to see that in terms of against the spread rather than, pure win-loss, to check that statistic in that context.
Yeah, I don't know what it would be for the spread. I only know the head-to-head there. But you're
No,
right,
that's
because
fair enough,
the
but
spread would be a much fairer reflection there. Unfortunately, I don't have those stats. But look, I think fans here don't need me to remind them the Bunnies could be in big trouble here. But for the sake of interest, the Bunnies have conceded an average of 36 points per game this season, whilst the Panthers sit at an average of 16. And the Panthers are also scoring more points on average. Now, the Panthers aren't too dominant at a core stadium historically. They've actually only won there about 50% of the time. But then I went and looked a little bit further into that, and they've actually only lost 2 of their last 13 there, with a lot of those games being big ones in finals, etc. The Rabbitohs have struggled recently against the Panthers. They've gone 1 from 6, and that win came last year when they were in a purple patch of form. They beat the Broncos Storm, and I think it was the Broncos Storm and Penrith, this team in that patch there. So I believe the Panthers will be far too strong here. The chance that the Rabbitohs team kind of suddenly galvanizes and it all clicks together for a winning performance is low for me at this stage. But then you factor in it's against this opposition in the Penrith Panthers, and I think that comes to, I dropped that now to little to none. So unfortunately, I do have to say Panthers win here. I think by a big margin. I'm not sure of that line. But if you're looking for a try scorer, Brian To'o will likely be going up against Isaac Thompson, who came in for Tane Milne, who was suspended. And To'o has 10 tries in his last 10 games at a core stadium. So it could be one.
And how good did he look last week in his 100th as well?
So that has to be an all-time record, right?
New South
21
Wales.
tackle breaks. 21. Wow.
He had spiders on him.
Yeah, I've never seen that before. Alrighty, let's move on to game 2. It's at Friday, 6 p.m, and it's Manly hosting the Canberra Raiders at 4 Pines Park, or otherwise known as Brookvale Oval. The line is set here at -8.5 against Manly. Of course, the Daily Cherry Evans news. We don't know exactly what's going to happen there yet, but we do know Ola Kawatu is suspended. So that means Ethan Bullimore starts and Sipley moves to the bench. Elliot Whitehead returns for the Raiders. Nick Kotrick comes in for James Schiller, and Albert Hopewadi moves to fullback for Chevy Stewart. All right, again, we have 2 sides here that are 1-1 in their last 2 games against each other. The Raiders hit this game on a 2-game losing streak, whilst Manly are on a 4-game unbeaten streak. Of course, that does include a bye in there. Manly are more than a converted try favourites here against a side, Winnie, that has conceded 37 points on average in their last 2 losses there. So do you see Manly as a clear favourite here, or do you need to wait until DCE is either in or out to have a strong voice on this game?
Well, look, they're a clear favourite whether DCE plays or not. We should definitely talk about how that might affect the market. Love the way you twisted the stats there. O'Keefe would be proud. 4 games unbeaten, and in that we include a bye and a draw. So, hey, they're still going pretty well, although I'd suggest flattered in a couple of those scores as well in the 2 wins, to be totally fair. So I'm sure some people thought I might take Canberra here, but the Raiders are on a short turnaround. You know, Manly's that type of team that will get you when you're down. We know they are that sort of bully, especially at rookie. And again, I'm adamant that Manly didn't deserve to win 13 plus last week, but it still showed you that Para was in for the fight. But once they were reduced to 12 for the final 20, and really they still were in for the fight for 10 of those, but once they were kind of down and out with their own doing, the Seagulls were more than happy to punish, and boy, they punished Para and my best bet dearly. Look, when I look at this game, what comes to mind is I played Raiders 2 weeks ago as a best bet, plus 8.5 in Brisbane, you know, and like there was no Payne Haas or Adam Reynolds for Brisbane, but you could say, well, there's no Ola Kawatu and maybe DC for Manly. So I guess you would ask, why won't I play Raiders this week when Manly aren't as good as Brisbane? And they're certainly not in my mind. Maybe others in the comments like Maddie will disagree with me. But I should explain my thinking here. For one, Canberra went into that game with Jamal Fogarty. They no longer have him. Canberra didn't go into that game off a couple of back-to-back shellackings, which they do now. So you have to downgrade the Raiders. And their own coach is saying, we don't have a team to win in the present. We've got to set up winning in the future. I suppose he's trying to take pressure off his players, but he's speaking very truthfully, and it is going to be hard for this team to win a lot of games in the near future. So not necessarily the side that I want to back. And also, I would say that would be a bet I'd regret. Like, I wouldn't make that bet again. Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't take the Raiders going into Brisbane, with that sort of line. So if I regret a bet, it doesn't mean I have to make a similar one with the same philosophy. So I'm going to leave it out, because even if DCE's out, this line does come in probably to 6.5. Brooksy will still step up, as funny as that is to say, and Manly's still probably got enough around the park to hurt a Raiders side that doesn't have the senior players to step up, even in the way that Parramatta did. I felt going into Friday, I thought Para's senior stars could take a stand, and they did for the most part. The Raiders, without that, being such a young squad, I think the start is crucial, because if Manly gets on top early and Canberra aren't up for it physically, Manly will run up to score for sure.
There's no doubt the Raiders will want to respond here, how poor they were last week. But looking at this one statistically, Manly are scoring more and conceding less points on average than the Raiders so far this season. Where the Raiders do have Manly covered is a slightly greater set completion percentage, but I do think it'll be tough to even capitalize on that without Jamal Fogarty steering the ship for them. The Raiders are also historically really poor at Brookvale. They've only won 7 times throughout history at a rate of 39%, dating back to 2011. So the last 13 years, they've actually only ever won twice at the venue. A lot of those wins they do have came in like the 90s and stuff. So they really struggle at this venue of late. Therefore, I do believe 4 points is a genuine home advantage. The Seagulls fans are always loud, boisterous. You always hear them through the effects mics. And the Seagulls are averaging 28 points at home so far this season. That includes wins over the Roosters and Panthers, who we both hold in pretty high esteem this season. Given the Raiders have conceded 74 points rather in their past 2, it does seem likely the Seagulls score big here and win big, but that will depend on DCE. A tip I can give out to our viewers would be, if Daly Cherry Evans is ruled out, or if you believe he'll be ruled out, that means Luke Brooks will take over as the dominant half in this team, and it will become his side. Luke Brooks is a left side player. The Seagulls have gone traditionally to the right this year. That's why we see someone like Ola Kawatu scoring so often. So if you do think DCE will be suspended, maybe it's worth weighing up a few anytime try scorers now on the left edge, where Luke Brooks will be more active as the dominant player.
I like that. And we got fact checked too. You said, I was making fun of the way you twisted those stats, but it's pointless, because you actually got your wires crossed. Manly have not had a bye yet. Jason corrected you there. So that unbeaten 4-game span is a win over Parramatta, Gold Coast, and of course Penrith in the DCE milestone, as well as a draw in New Zealand. So that is form to be respected for sure.
Yeah, it's not bad at all there by Manly. Alrighty, let's move on to Game 3. It's at Friday, 8 p.m. and it's the Broncos v Roosters. We're at Suncorp Stadium, and the line is set at -6.5 against the Broncos. For the Broncos, they welcome back Ezra Mam and Selwyn Cobbo. For the Roosters, Daniel Tupou returns, so Joseph Suali'i moves to centre. Let's continue this theme, Winnie, for the sake of it. These sides are also both 1-1 in their last 2 encounters. The Broncos have won 4 of their last 5, whilst the Roosters, that number is only 2. Despite that, these sides are almost identical in points scored and points conceded so far this year. So this game could be a lot closer than what that line would suggest. How do you see this one playing out, Winnie?
I'm going to flip straight back to you. People have got questions. I'm going to put you on the spot. All right, go back to Manly, Canberra. Yep. So give us a try score tip then. You said left side. So who's jumping out at you? People want to know. So we're talking about Kola, Tommy Talau would be the outside backs there. Who's the left edge back rower? Is it Waddell?
I'm fairly sure Jason Saab is on the right side.
Yeah, Saab
and he plays with Ruben Garrick. So that would mean Tommy Talau
on the left.
Or Kula. And they're against the Raiders.
Andy asked, is 2 or 5 the left? It depends. It varies team by team. Cam Smith, the GOAT, says 2 is left edge, but don't believe it's always the case. So who you got? We don't need a conference, but just give us a name or 2, because I think that's a good observation.
Yeah, I think it really depends on what you're looking for here. Like, if you're looking to beef up a same-game multi, I'd go someone like Tommy Talau, Tom Trbojevic, and if you really want to beef it up, you could even include Luke Brooks himself. He has scored a couple of times this season, but if you do want to be safe, then you go someone like Tommy Talau, who will likely be against Xavier Savage, who is a smaller body than him. I think it depends on what sort of value you're looking for, Winnie. If you want safe, Tommy Talau. If you want value, you could go both center and wing. You could go the winger and the fullback. You've got a few different options there, but it all comes back to whether DCE is ultimately suspended or not.
I do like that, because the minute that news comes out, they will adjust the line, but they won't necessarily adjust try scorer prices. So I think you're onto something there, that you could instantly attack the left edge in any way you see fit. And again, you want to juice your odds, you can pick more left edge players or pick one of those guys, for a double, for example. Okay, now you led me into Roosters Broncos, which sets up to be a cracker. It's another rematch because we got this one in Vegas. However, Radley was one of the best on ground in Vegas, and he's not in the team. Tristan noting that Mann being back has pushed this line beyond 6, but I also think Radley not making the 17 has increased the line too. Daniel Tupou is back. Cobbo in as well. And just on Ezra Mann, of course, seen a couple of comments coming through, but it's a big game for him. I know that Lenu was sidelined, but I think there will be a bit of extra feeling in this one. I'll mention again, as I did in the recap, you had Reynolds and Walsh limp off the field on Saturday night, but they've said it's cramps for both, so you shouldn't be too worried. And you got to see Payne Haas back, and he was at his damaging best. And yes, Undertaker suggested I'd be on Roosters for a best bet, and while I'm not, I do think the line's too high. Of course, I'm wary of Brisbane. I thought this Broncos team would have some average weeks, would have some highs and lows early in the season. You had such a big, and I would say near perfect year last year, where the minor prem was there for the taking. They could have had that, and geez, the grand final was too. I don't need to bring that up again. But then this year, injury disruption, teams are up for Brisbane. No one's going to get surprised by them. And they've impressed me. There's no signs of a grand final hangover, much to my chagrin, because Brisbane has rolled each and every week. And yes, Brisbane have lost 3 games this year, but it's like round 0. Vegas, that's always a strange one. It's a kind of like an isolated game, and Roosters were great on the day. You lose at Penrith, where you didn't have Haas or Reynolds, and Walsh got injured 3 minutes in, so that's very forgivable. And you also lose at Melbourne with no Walsh, and Reynolds is out at halftime, and you lose that by 2 points. So it's like Brisbane's been very impressive all year long, a team that I thought was a clear candidate to slide. They've proven me wrong for sure. It's still early in, but after 2 months, I definitely looking like I didn't get that prediction right, that they'd missed the top 4. Here's a great test. You got the Roosters that put up 60 last week, their best performance, not just this year, but maybe in a couple of years. Longer turnaround for the Roosters, but no Radley or, of course, Lenu, the guys that had big games in the trenches when Roosters won this fixture 2 months ago. That gives me a little bit more doubt. Like, I felt more confident in the Vegas game than I do here. And another reason, of course, is in this time, it's not a neutral venue. The Broncos are at home, and it really is a strong home advantage. So if I make the line myself, I'm saying straight away, Brisbane's home advantage is 3.5 points. Lineup for lineup, I'd say the Roosters have the better interchange, but I can't really tell you any other aspect of the matchup is a clear advantage to the Roosters. So I will agree that Brisbane's the stronger team, and therefore that line's got to be 5.5 minimum. Is 7.5 getting a little long? Perhaps, but add in the revenge factor, and of course my trepidation of going against Brisbane again. I couldn't do it this week.
Yeah, that line has moved to 7.5 now. Good pick up there since I made that graphic that changed. And on the revenge factor you mentioned, well, we can't really factor that into a line, but it could be a thing where with what happened to Ezra Mann over in Las Vegas, the Broncos really respond for him as their teammates. You mentioned the home ground advantage. I'll start there. The Roosters haven't been too bad at Suncorp, winning 10. They've won 10 games there. That's at 45%, so slightly less than half. But they're exactly 3-3 in their last 6 here, which dates back to 2021. So while Suncorp does genuinely seem like a massive home advantage against a lot of sides, due to the big crowd that the Broncos draw, perhaps not as large a factor here. But I do need to note the Broncos are undefeated at Suncorp this year, so that's important to mention there. These sides have met this year. We mentioned it. It was in Las Vegas. Roosters got the better of them. But of course, there's a question mark over how much we can read into that because we don't have any data over what it's like playing in Las Vegas for the season launch. So it's difficult to see how much that plays into that. I believe the Broncos' last 3 wins here are impressive, but we have to note as well, they are against lower competition than the Roosters. Their wins being the Raiders, Dolphins, and Tigers. 2 out of 3 of those sides missed key players coming in or lost key players during their contest. So I'm going to go a little bit bold here, Winnie. I'm going to say Roosters win here. They have won 4 of their last 5 against the Broncos, and it's also Jared Waerea-Hargrave's 300th club game for the Roosters. So I think they'll turn up with the right mindset here, and they could shock the Broncos at home and give them that loss that you've kind of thought the Broncos might have over these last few weeks. It hasn't quite come to fruition.
And that would be just right, wouldn't it? That like I go against Brisbane each and every week, and they pull tries out of nowhere, out of their you-know-what, and then this week they'll probably have an off game. But that could be how it goes. I'll actually be perfectly happy to see Brisbane roll the Roosters here, and that hopefully it will turn out to be wise to stay away.
Yeah, it would certainly be a stinger for you if my prediction there does play out in that fashion. Don't forget, Friday Night Footy also means an exclusive Better Same Game multi crafted by Winnie. Better also provides further NRL talk and tips in the Fox Sports Lab, which you can check out on their YouTube channel every Wednesday. And always importantly, think, is this a bet you really want to place? For free and confidential advice, call the number or visit the website in our show's description. Alrighty, Game 4, Saturday, 3 p.m. It's the Bulldogs v Tigers. We're at a core stadium, and the line is set at -7.5 against the Bulldogs, who will welcome back Kurt Mann. No changes for this Tigers side. We do break the trend here when you have sides going 1-1. The Bulldogs are 2-0 in their recent games over the Tigers. They come into this game having won 3 of their last 5, whilst the Tigers have only won 1 of their last side. This is 2 sides that will be desperate to improve on what must be said as disappointing seasons of recent. So who do you have winning here and why?
I have to say the Dogs. I mean, you get a big win, then you go into your bye. I feel like you've got to kind of consolidate that win now that you come in beyond the converted try favourites, because how often are the Bulldogs really strong favourites in a game like this? Again, the Titans won last week. It doesn't look like they'll be playing finals footy this year. But in my top 8 prediction, I'm probably among the only people who also put the Dogs top 8. And again, it's too early to say which tip's right or wrong. But that one has a real chance to be right. I think people could see that there's more ability in that side than past seasons, that maybe they didn't really recognize it coming in. And it's a good time to get the bye for the Dogs because they've been a bit banged up. So some of those guys that have been playing injured. Plus, the biggest inclusion, of course, is Preston coming off that broken jaw on Good Friday. So he's named to return and to start. And then we're sticking with the same 17. I didn't lose much respect, honestly, for that loss against Brisbane. I was more so impressed by how disciplined the Broncos were defensively. And I felt like the Tigers built a decent game and got close, but just couldn't get over the line, or did get over the line. But Annesley says that, on a letter of the law, it was no try. So I have to move on. I would be slightly concerned that Appy did get forced off the field with a back injury, but the game was gone at that point, so it could have been very much precautionary. It's just that this team relies, on their hooker more than any other side in the comp, and he's so influential. So you need Appy to be 100% if you want to play the Tigers line or consider that they could spring the upset. And finally, I'd say I like both these teams. You mentioned it. They've had bad seasons for the last few years, and that therefore it builds in people's minds that these are just sides that can't be trusted, and they're teams that you generally want to bet against, that the general public does anyway. But I can see the signs that both these teams have turned the corner and are heading in the right direction. It's just that they're playing each other, So I leaned west, actually. I don't think many people will want them. And that line has got out a decent way, but not strong enough to play as a best bet.
Let's start with the core stadium. The Bulldogs have won there 50% of the time across their history, where the Tigers are at 40% from 9 attempts, and that includes 9 consecutive losses at this ground. Unless it's a big game, for my take, a court doesn't provide too much of a home advantage just because it's such a large ground and there isn't that atmosphere that there are at other grounds, such as like a Four Pines Park, where that is a genuine home advantage. These sides are very evenly matched as far as their stat averages are concerned so far this season, though the Bulldogs do average slightly more and concede slightly less, with 5 points separating the Tigers in both those categories. Where this is an interesting one for me, when is you look at the ladder here and you see the Bulldogs in the top 8 and you see the Tigers in third last. But it's actually one win that separates these sides this year. They've both got big scalps in the Sharks and the Eels. And really, outside of that, they haven't beaten too many other higher tier teams, I suppose you could say, or teams that we view on a higher level there. So, look, I expect the Bulldogs to win here, but I don't think the Tigers are out of it at all. In fact, from a betting and a value perspective, I probably play Tigers, or at least them at the line. I think there's more value there than there is at, like, I think the Bulldogs are $1.40 head to head. My tip is Bulldogs in a close one, but if people like value with their bets, I would say don't rule out the Tigers in this one completely.
And you mentioned the scalps, like, who'd you say, Sharks and Eels. That's two teams that the Tigers have beaten. People are probably screaming at their phone right now saying Eels are not a big scalp. But let's give the Tigers Sharks, and then the Doggies did not beat the Eels. You might be thinking the Doggies, Roosters, of course, beat the Roosters, which was a great win on the day, and they had an exceptional first 40 minutes in that one for sure.
It was the best 40 minutes they've played in a long time. My apologies there for getting that wrong for our viewers. We'll move to Game 5, Saturday, 5:30 p.m. It's the Titans v Storm. We're at Seabus Super Stadium. The line is set at minus 13.5 against the Storm, who have one change. Xavier Coates is out injured, so Tyron Wishart remains on the wing. Bronson Garlick joins their bench. For the Titans, Moeki Fotuaika is out with a concussion, so Joe Simpson starts at prop, and they have a change in their wing and centre combination. Khan Pereira and Shop are out. Smith, Shields, and Sami take their place. When you believe it or not, these sides are actually 1-1 in their last 2 encounters, and I did tip one of those early into the season last year. Recent form reads Titans 1-4, with that win coming last round. Storm are the opposite. They are 4-1. Now, Titans did shock the Rugby League world last round, winning with an important win there. But for me and for you with your best bet, it seems a really difficult task to repeat that again. And I know you see it that way also.
Yes, and I want to shout out The Undertaker because he is 6-2 on his bet of the week, and he did take the Titans this week. And my instinct was like, yeah, you're probably right, because the week that you want to bet the Titans, how often do you ever want to back a side like that? So if something's telling you to actually take them as your bet of the week, it's probably some pretty strong reasoning. However, I will say Matty got plus 14.5. Now it's still available to play at minus 12.5. So we can both win there if it lands 13 or 14. Let us know who you're going to side with. For me, Fotuaika, I don't know if Matty knew at the time he played that he's out with that concussion protocol. That's a massive loss, because now it compounds what was your strength coming into the season of your rep front row. Now both of them are gone. The backline shuffles, I don't know why. That courageous win, Clarkie, why you're going to drop AKP, I'm not sure. Of course, Coates out and maybe no Nas, I understand. I tell you who I'd love to see this guy far longer, because I caught a bit of the New South Wales Cup on the weekend. He's carving up. Could he not play on the wing instead of Wishart? Anyway, not far be it for me to second guess Craig Bellamy. The thing about Melbourne is, with what we've said, is like great teams don't win close games, they avoid them. And that's what Melbourne finally did, avoided the close game last week. And that's the mark of a true contender. It's not just picking up the 2 points here and there. It's laying to waste teams. And unfortunately for you, I think that's your fate this weekend, because still no Jaden Campbell, as much as Brimo was outstanding at fullback and is so dangerous in the middle of the field. Look at the Titans kind of 2-7. It doesn't scare you very much. Where are the points coming from for the Gold Coast? It could be a little bit of rain around, which you could argue could keep it closer, but also I just don't know. I think the Titans are going to have a hard time scoring in this game. So another option, I definitely considered just playing Titans team total under. But when I look at Melbourne, I do see that ruthless edge about them, and the fact that they're just relishing having that first choice spine and all fit now that Munster, has shown that he can deliver his best as well. Once you've seen a player kind of overcome an injury, what they're capable of, I know the nature of it is he can have some weeks better than others, but it's pretty frightening. And I know that there could be rain around, but Seabus, don't you feel like it's always a lightning fast track? I just can't see anything other than Storm in total control in this one. And you might say to me, well, that's a pretty obvious pick. Like I haven't played other sides because I think they're too obvious this week. But it's like Melbourne's only won one game this year by double digits. So I don't think we've really seen them flex their muscles multiple times yet. And the Titans have burned punters, not just last week with the upset, but they've in fact burned the punters that have gone against them with the line the last month. So it could actually be the right time to now fade the Gold Coast. On top of that, last time they met at this venue, the Titans won, and I don't think that's in your favour. I think that's all the more reason that the Storm don't let it happen again. Hard to make this line high enough for me, so I did play it.
Interesting to note, since we've been live, that line has moved to minus 14.5 against the Storm there, which could be important because they are conceding 13 points exactly less per game than the Titans are this year. But obviously they will score a couple of their own there, so maybe not too important. They're also scoring 8 more points per game. They actually have a better record at Seabus than the Titans do also. Really surprisingly, the Titans do actually defend more efficiently, at least as far as tackle percentages are concerned. But you just feel that if you're backing the Titans here, you believe they're bringing that same energy they've brought for the last month, and in New Zealand especially, if not more. And that is really difficult to replicate 5 weeks in a row in the NRL. It's such a tough competition. Whereas if you're tipping Storm or you like Storm at the line, you're essentially just backing that they turn up and play footy, right? Every indication, stat, roster comparison will tell you the Storm is the better side here. But that's actually something, as you mentioned, they didn't do the last time they came to Seabus, where they conceded 38 points against the Titans. So I think Craig Bellamy will be acutely aware of that, and he will challenge his team to turn up in a big way defensively and go for the full 80. The other side of that coin is the Titans have shown enough effort over the full 80 where they are fighting and getting back into games. And the Storm did allow the Rabbitohs back into the contest on 2 occasions. It was the Rabbitohs' own errors that stopped that momentum swing. But again, I think that hurts the Titans because Bellamy will identify that and come up with a game plan so that does not happen again. Storm have won 9 of their last 10 against the Titans. They've only lost at Seabus Super Stadium twice since 2011. And it is Cameron Munster's 200th NRL game as he comes off one of his greatest performances ever. So for me, love my team. We've been awesome and brave this year, but the Storm are a bridge a bit too far for us at this point in the season, especially missing key people, as you said, like Moeki Fotuaika.
And sorry you don't get the last word on your own team because Nakul is going to chime in. He's got a tip, and it's probably going to support my best bet play as well.
Hey everyone, it's Nakul from Wiki. Oh my god, Hamale Olakuatu went as close as you could. I think he almost scored 3 different bloody times last week. Tip for this week, guys, we've got Jerome Hughes up against his old club, the Gold Coast Titans, paying $4 on 365. I hope this price lasts until this video comes out, because it's just an incredible price. I've checked a couple of bookies, but you almost don't need to. Jerome Hughes is a freakish try scorer and up against the Titans. Google Wiki Linktree, as always, guys. Odds comparison to our Discord, our content, podcast, etc. It's all there. Good luck, punt responsibly, and enjoy round 9 of the NRL. We've got Magic Round and Origin just around the corner.
I like that tip from Nakul because if you look at the Storm and how great they were last week, you'd actually say Jerome Hughes was their most quiet spine player. Pappenhausen, Munster and Grant took that game over. I will not confirm or deny whether I messaged Jerome Hughes a couple of third-party agreements when I heard that he looked to get at the Storm, those rumours. They were pretty enticing, but unfortunately he told me, don't believe everything you see online. He did see the humour in it, though.
And there's a little bump there. Former Titan as well, just to rub it in too. What that team could do with a star half.
Oh, we'd love if we had Jerome Hughes, but he was a fullback with us and he's developed in the Melbourne system, which is where players do go to a whole new level. Alrighty, Game 6. We're at Saturday, 7:35 p.m. It's the Cowboys v Dolphins. We're at Queensland Country Bank Stadium in Townsville, and the line is set at -7.5 against the Cowboys, who welcome back Heel and Lukey via their interchange. Viliami Vailea also comes into the centres with Tom Chester unavailable. For the Dolphins, they welcome back Felice Kaufusi and Kaneli Lemuelu. Winnie, we have a rematch here from round 1 where the Cowboys absolutely thumped the Dolphins at Suncorp. This time, the rematch occurs on the Cowboys' home turf, and for me, it just seems unlikely that the Dolphins are able to get revenge here. That line suggests it'll be a little bit closer than what I'm seeing it, but you have the Cowboys as the best bet as well, right?
Yeah, and I thought about that round 1 where I felt like the Cowboys are more than a converted try better than the Finns, and you got to remember that team, round 1, right? Like Herbie Farnworth was there, Tom Flegler was there, the Hammer was there. Okay, so I know that the Cows are on a 3-game losing streak, and I know that the Dolphins have surprised people, but I saw enough out of North Queensland, that fight back against Penrith. You know, both these teams lost last week. They both did mount fight backs, but you're going to be a lot more impressed by North Queensland's loss, and it's more understandable too, because it was against Penrith, whereas the Finns lost to a Knights side without Ponga. Look at the lineups. I'd say Lukey's the most notable inclusion. Good to get Finn Diesel back and Lemuelu, who is a former Cowboy, you know, in the reserves. That gives some reinforcement to the Finns, but K-Brom has failed that HIA, and J-Brom, no certainty either. And what it comes down to for me is I want to take teams when I have a strong inclination that it means a great deal to them. It's a really important game. It's one that you're going to circle, and I think that's the case for North Queensland, that they can't afford at this point of the season to lose 4 in a row. I know that you might argue it's revenge. Like anytime there's a relatively recent matchup and the Finns didn't just lose, so they got a footy lesson and they got ripped apart by North Queensland, sure. But the Cows could probably spin it that last time these two teams met at QCB, the Dolphins actually got the upset. So I don't think North Queensland's going to lose. You know, like I said, go down to Sydney, lose back-to-back. You're going to come home and lose back-to-back. That's even worse. Don't see it happening. More key pieces are still out for the Finns. And I know that crazy result in Darwin threw everyone off the scent. I think last week was closer to the reality at the moment for this team in the NRL. And so, again, it's like for a lot of the same reasons that I liked the Cowboys in round 1. And, again, you move a line from 5.5 to 7.5, but you flipped home field. So I think it should go even further than that, especially the fact that North Queensland left no doubt about the gap between the sides on that day. I'll do it again. I think this line can only climb.
And the Dolphins aren't really turning up for these Queensland rivalry games of recent. They've only won 1 of their last 4 against Queensland rivals. That was, of course, the Titans this year. Last time these sides met, it was round 1, and both sides' defense was off. There was 3 tries in the opening 11 minutes, and this time I actually expect it to be a bit more of a lower scoring contest. Now, that is a bold prediction because the Cowboys averaged the most points per game this year at 30, and the Dolphins averaged the 3rd most at 25. Keep in mind that number could be a lot higher if they didn't botch so many tries last round against the Knights. Now, Winnie, if it's a lower scoring contest, we know that goal kicking comes into it. Well, Jermaine Asako has only converted 5 of his last 13 attempts, whereas Valentine Holmes is kicking at about 3 out of every 4 so far this year. That being said, you did steal my line. I had a line here that the Dolphins have never lost at Queensland Country Bank Stadium, and then I was going to joke that they're 1 from 1, but you've ruined that. On a serious note, the Cowboys will take a lot of confidence against what they were able to do against Penrith over the course of 80 minutes. And because of that, I think a big focus this week will be getting the start right and their defense. I believe they hit halftime with the Dolphins, maybe like up 12-0. And then we see this game close out with the unders in the second half, with Cowboys always in control and Dolphins never quite able to get over the hump. But yeah, that's a bold one, Winnie. I know you don't like to bet on overs, unders because it's so unpredictable. I'd imagine there'd be a bit of value about the unders just because both sides are really good at scoring points at the moment.
And that was a good call last week. A lot of people in the comments of our show said unders for Knights, Finns, you know, both sides without their best attacking weapons. And it was a defensive grind for sure. And if I can address El Duda's comment there, so he's talking about, can you talk about the wooden spoon market, or least wins, as it might be noted on most bookies, Titans are $2. To me, the Titans have shown enough fight that they are not certainties for the wooden spoon. So I agree, just face value. Therefore, if $2 is too short for the Gold Coast, there could be some value elsewhere in the market. I know Luke commented a couple of weeks ago, as soon as he saw Fogarty injured, he went Raiders 81. Like, I love a bet like that, where you're not saying it's going to happen, but it's speculative. And we just can't make our full assessment of a team 6 weeks into a season, because like things can really change and teams can pick up. Like you saw Newcastle last year, sides can also fall off a cliff. So let me set myself some homework. Like you can have you can say who you like at the moment, Clarky, but I will do a little bit of a deeper dive into who I think like the other key candidates are outside of the Titans. But what I will say is I wouldn't rush to back somebody else, because I do think the Titans will lose this weekend as well. The week you want to probably play somebody else is when the Titans are a legit danger of picking up 2 points.
One thing I'd like to do, if you're up for it, is like a mid-season show where we get a few of your longer-term plays, like my Wooden Spoon could be one, Minor Premiers could be one, could do a multi with some sides top 8, some missing, etc. We'll talk about that off camera, but I'd be down for that. And if our viewers are as well, certainly let us know. Alrighty, let's go game 7. Sunday, 2 p.m. It's the Knights v Warriors. We're at McDonald Jones Stadium, and the line is set at -2.5 against the Warriors, who welcome back Kurt Capewell and Bunty Afoa. For the Knights, no changes, but Jacob Saifiti is named to start, and he left the ground last week with an Achilles/ankle injury on crutches. So I think he might be ruled out closer to kickoff, but I obviously can't confirm that. Alrighty, these two sides did meet in round 4 this year, where the Warriors won by 8. Their previous meeting was the 2023 final series, where the Warriors decimated them by 30. Both sides come into this having won 2 of their last 5. So I've got here who improves on that record in your opinion, Winnie, but we already know it is the Warriors.
Yeah, this is like the shortest line of the week, so it could be tough for some people to pick, but you're right. That game earlier this year, the Knights had Caleb Ponga in that one, and still lost by 8, and that line was, I think, near double digits. So I don't rush to play against Newcastle at home, because I do think that's a strong home advantage and there'll be a very partisan crowd, but I don't see New Zealand being intimidated by that. I could only look to the Warriors in this one, as you did predict. On a talk injured player theory, we talk about a really key, well-known player is out. So the market reaction is you bet against that team. The market shifts, but actually everybody else on the team lifts, like plays a bit harder, tries to make up for it. And so you can often supplement some, if not all, of that player's production in a short term, and it can be smart to back on a team with a high-profile player out. But you can also get the letdown factor that this week you find out, Armstrong is an exciting young prospect fullback, but he's no Caleb Ponga, is he? And when you've got to generate points in this one against a Warriors side that will be desperate, I'm assured of that. So similar to North Queensland, I look at the Warriors, who not only have failed to win the last 3, but all 3 they were more than a converted try favourite. Last week they were like 13.5-point favourites at home. And you know the Warriors have got on deck next in the schedule? Roosters followed by Panthers. So like you have to be smart enough to look at the schedule and be like, we're doing bloody well if we can even get a split there. We could be staring down the barrel of 5-6 losses on the trot, if we don't get this one. And that even factors in for me that, I'm concerned about Johnson because I know he's not 100%, but this feels like such a critical game that he's going to push through. They'll rest it at a more strategic time, I would suggest, to get Capewell back off the throat injury and Saifiti in doubt, as you say. I didn't mention that at the start, but that's also important. So it all lines up to me that the Warriors will win this, and it's a short line.
I'm seeing it the same way, and for our viewers' information, we don't compare notes before, so everything here is organic as to whether we agree or disagree. Leo says, how is your voice changing, mate? That's probably my kids in the background, for which I apologize. Both sides are 3 out of 8 so far this year, but the Warriors have scored slightly more points per game and conceded slightly less. Every other stat for these sides, though, when he was so close, it's not even worth a mention, but I did note that it could possibly be the most even matchup as far as stats are concerned so far this season. You mentioned the home ground advantage. The Knights have won 8 of their past 10 at McDonald Jones, One of those losses was this year to the Roosters by 2, and in round 1 when the Raiders thumped them and shocked everyone. Whereas Warriors are 1 from 4 in their last 5 at this venue, and their next win prior to that came in 2016. So we must give the home advantage to the Knights here. I think this is a game afterwards where the Warriors are going to win, and we say, where has this side been the past month? There is a reality where they lose, and we say, okay, there's something seriously up with the Warriors. But I still hold them in high regard. So it's backs to the wall for them. I expect the Knights to drop off from what we saw last round. Not only will I won't say they were lucky, but I will note that the Dolphins literally botched multiple chances, where the likes of like Roger Tuivasa-Sheck and Sean Johnson combining, for example, will not. Capel's back. That's huge defensively as well. I like the Warriors here 13 plus. That might be a bold prediction given that line, but I like them 13 plus, and I'm prepared to put that one out there. Final game of the round, Sunday, 4:05 p.m. Sharks v Dragons. We're at PointsBet Stadium in Cronulla, and the line is set at minus 13.5 against the Sharks. One change for them. Toby Rudolph returns via the interchange. For the Dragons, they're without Moses Sully, so Zach Lomax moves to centre, and Michaeli Ravalawa returns on the wing. Someone else who is returning is Shane Flanagan. The Sharks' only premiership-winning coach returns against his former side as they find their best form under their current coach, Craig Fitzgibbon. This is also a traditional rivalry game, and I'm expecting fireworks in this one. I think it could be game of the round, but it is a huge line here, Winnie. Do you think the Dragons can get up emotionally for this one for their coach?
That's the question. Let's talk Flanagan. So did you see the press conference? I might repeat it for those who didn't, because it was pretty funny. They said, emotional game next week, Flano. And he said, not really. Won a comp there. They haven't won one since, have they?
Yeah.
You know, but maybe it was actually mastermind deflection, because his team just copped 60, and then everyone came out of that talking about Flano versus the Sharks next week instead of the shortcomings of the Dragons. But he has added a little bit of spice to this one. If you're calling it potential game of the round, you better be about to say that you're taking the Dragons, because that's a massive line for what could be game of the round. I see it the other way. I think Cronulla could steamroll. But back on Flano, like, did the Sharks do him wrong? Am I kind of missing something? Maybe I don't read up on the off-season news as much, right? But he was stood down for what? His part in the Asada
So
stuff?
he got stood down for his role in the Asada scandal.
Yes.
And what happened from there was he was directed to have no contact with the club. And it was found they found a laptop at his home which had like 10,000 emails of him essentially still running the team from a work from home environment.
Where's the grudge? Did he expect to be rehired once his suspension was over, or where's the bad blood? Because it should be happy returns, as you said. The season from heaven for him in 2016.
Who knows?
You don't know either. Your guess is as good as mine. So anyway, it's a good headline, right? I just didn't know if I was missing something there. But look, the Dragons were so flat last week, and this is my point. The game might mean a lot to Shane, but I don't really see why it means that much to the Dragons players, to be honest. It probably means more to Cronulla, especially after those comments. You got Sully out, though. Leilua and Ravalawa in is big. Lomax gets to play centre again. But speaking of centres, Ramian, what a year he's having. And you add Rudolph to a Sharks side that had no losses sustained against Canberra. I can't see the Sharks being stopped. They didn't miss a beat without Trindle. Not that they leaned on Atkinson a lot, but he did play his part. Hines is going as well as anyone in the competition. Throw this out there. You really got to consider him in the 6 jersey for New South Wales, in my opinion. You got Brayley McInnes in Origin calculations as well. That bench packs an absolute punch. Everything says Sharks to me. So it's another one where the only reason I'm not on, what's the line now? It's like 13.5. I mean, or is even at maybe 14.5 in places? I think everyone's going to be on Cronulla 13 plus. I think SGMs across Australia are going to have a lot of Sharkies players involved for anytime tries. And I know a lot of people were begrudging Mulatalo was one of the few who didn't score last weekend, for example, but it'll probably be more of the same this weekend. And it just feels too obvious. The Dragons are that kind of gritty side that occasionally will surprise when you don't expect it. I'm not touching them, but that's the only reason I didn't lay the chalk again. I've picked enough favourites this week as it is.
Yeah, Militai didn't score last week, but he has an awesome record at home. I don't have the exact stats on me, but I think it's more than one try per game over a pretty large sample size there. So he is definitely one to consider. Where are we at here? So these two sides did meet twice last year in 2023, and the Sharks won both games by huge margins. Collectively in 2023, they won 92-24. With that in mind, the Sharks are 4 from 5 this year. The Dragons are only slightly behind at 3 from 5, but they are coming off a devastating loss on Anzac Day. The Sharks' attack has been brilliant this year, but as a result, their defense has actually flown right under the radar. No one talks about the Sharks as a defensive side at all. They've only conceded 100 points. Now, that's an average of 14 per game, but I can tell you that's the lowest in the competition. Even the great Penrith Panthers have conceded more tries than the Sharks so far this year. The Dragons, they struggle at PointsBet Stadium. They've only won there 7 times at a rate of 33%, with their last win at this venue coming in 2018, 6 years ago. Meanwhile, the Sharks have won 7 of their last 10 at home, with 2 of those losses coming via a field goal loss and 4 points. So even in those losses, they were good or near enough and close there. They've also beaten the Dragons 7 games in a row. So if the Dragons turn up here, this will be game of the round. But I personally don't think they do. Just going through those stats there, it seems like a very one-sided contest. I believe the Sharks win here. They win well. The Dragons will be desperate to get their defense right after last week, but the Sharks will equally shut them out with their defense. That'll suffocate the Dragons, make them feel the pressure, overplay their hand, especially when the Sharkies narrow in on Ben Hunt. So I think Sharkies win here by 20 or more. Alrighty, when we are live and we have a lot of people join us throughout the live. So if you could I just get one more recap of your best bets for round 9?
Yeah, so there were a couple of favourites that I could have nearly played as well. But we certainly haven't talked you out of any of these favourites, have we? Just like to put a bow on that Sharks game. I think you said it there. Best plus minus in the comp, best differential, plus 99. I think they are this season. And the only knock on Cronulla would be they haven't played many tough opponents, but the Dragons aren't a tough opponent. So it is really hard not to envision more of the same. If you like, the teams like Penrith this week against Souths, Sharks, we really haven't given you a lot of reason to knock it. But my favourite 3 favoured sides are Melbourne minus 12.5 at $1.90, lads and Neds. Cowboys minus 7.5 at $1.90 sports bet. Warriors minus 3.5 at $1.90 better. Let us know if any of those have moved in the course of the last hour that we've been doing this show. I'll tell you something else. We've got Colt on the screen, adds to the show each and every week. He's just as committed as you and I. Colt, reach out to me at Jacob Wynn, Facebook, Instagram page, whatever it is, or comment on this YouTube video afterwards because I can't reply to comments in the chat. I'm going to invite you to the TryPod punt party. I'm going to give you one of the first giveaway tickets, and we've got many more to give away in the next 3 weeks. I guess I'll tell people now, unfortunately, we thought we had our hands on 30 tickets for Magic Round like last year. It turned out we could only get around 10 or 12. We felt that wasn't enough to do our event justice, so we're going to actually do it on the Sunday of Magic Round at a private venue rather than at the stadium. I know it's nothing like the real thing, but we're going to make it a cracking day with a lot of pod legends and people that win tickets to come along. And Clarky, you might even make an appearance there yourself. But Colt, reach out. And others who tune in every week, you will get many opportunities to come along if you would like to come to the TryPod punt party.
Absolutely. Colt and I will be there in our Titans jerseys, having a few cold ones up the back there, talking about how our side is going to ambush the rest of the competition and win the 2024 NRL season. As Jacob said, keep saying...
Sorry, mate, there's going to be no drugs.
No drug policy, huh? But no, please, guys, stay tuned with the show because we are really excited to do some of these giveaways. We'll do some on my page, Clarky's Rugby League column, for those that are here through my page, and we'll also do it through the live show. So really exciting times ahead for our Magic Round watch party. With that in mind, we want to say thank you very much to everyone. We appreciate you spending your Tuesday evening with us. Have a fantastic week ahead. Enjoy your round 9 footy. Stay tuned to the TryPod Facebook group for the mixed matchup, and we will see you on Sunday night within 15 minutes of the final game to recap all the action and hopefully a successful round on the punt. Over to you, Winnie, for the famous last words.
Yes, hopefully. Now, mixed matchup, I mentioned before. I'll get that one resolved tomorrow. Have a great week, guys. Let me know what you think of my 3 plays. Can I get a winning week this week? Do you like some others better? Are you taking me on? My form has not been up to snuff recently. Let me know. Love to hear it. Love to discuss it. And of course, we'll face the music. Rain, hail, or shine on Sunday. So cheers, Clarky. I'll talk to you then. Lego.